and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Eenie Frost, and we're going to be cooking for Yom Kippur. Now that might sound a little bit unusual, since Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur, Yom Day, Kippur Atonement, Day of Atonement, is a day of fasting, and we do not eat anything. But as we all know, after we come home that night, we have to really be ready. As we approach the high holidays, there's a beautiful feeling in Jewish tradition that tells you just do not walk into a Rosh Hashanah dinner and sit down and say, all right, this is holiday. We begin to think about the holidays weeks and weeks in advance. We think about what it means to come to the new year, to Rosh Hashanah, to turn a page in the calendar, and to think of our lives from last year and what next year is going to bring. And we know that next year will be better and sweeter and beautiful. And during the 10 days of penitence, we think about perhaps during the year we had an argument or a disagreement with someone. And as we think about asking for repentance, God will forgive us for our sins to God. But for sins against man, this is a part of the free will of man. And this argument or this misunderstanding was something that we created with another person. So call up that sister, that brother, that friend, or that neighbor and say, wasn't it really silly? Let's get together and let's start over again this year. And as we go to the synagogue on Yom Kippur and we hear the beautiful Kol Nidras recited, and we come back the next morning and we're doing something entirely different than we've ever done before. We do not labor, we do not work, we do not go to school or drive carpools, or have anybody else work for us in the lawn. We spent the entire day in prayer and spirituality. And as we come home from the synagogue that evening, your friends and your relatives will be coming in and storming and saying, oh, I'm starving and I'm thirsty, and what have you got to drink? I have something for you. Now, this is really spectacular. When the guests come in, you say to them, how about a nice, cold, refreshing bowl of cold strawberry soup? And it's very simple. This is how we make it. First, you take a box of pudding, not instant pudding, but regular pudding mix. Now, the regular pudding mix will tell you on the box that it requires 2.5 cups of water. And I did start it already because I wanted you to see the thickness that is created after you cook this for about 10 minutes. And add 2 egg yolks. Now add your egg yolks in the beginning, because if you wait until the end, you know what's going to happen. Those eggs are going to cook. So the egg yolks will make it fairly creamy. I have added 2 egg yolks and 2.5 cups of water. And I have allowed this to cook about 10 or 15 minutes until it's nice and creamy. Now then, add to this 1 10-ounce package of frozen strawberries, defrosted. The whole thing, the juice, the strawberries, everything. Add this right into your strawberry soup. And you see it's already giving it a nice color and a nice flavor. Then you add to it 1 cup, oh, here's the secret ingredient. They'll never know, and they'll be so high from all of the praying all day long, they will just enjoy the whole thing. A cup of wine. The people who gave me this recipe, Ruth and Bruno, said, you know, Eenie, you're getting so excited about cold fruit soup. In Europe, we did it all the time. This was something that's been done for generations. Here in America, it's something new and fashionable now to have cold soups. He said this was always served in Europe. In fact, it was generally served in the parlor before they went into dinner. And so they didn't get so excited about it. And he said that when they made the cold fruit soup, in order to give it a little flavor, they added a cup of wine. And I asked Bruno, what do you usually use? And he said that they usually use Chablis or maybe a Rhine wine. Now I'm adding a cup of Chablis wine to this wonderful soup that will give it a very, very nice flavor. And just stir it for a moment because it will mix very quickly. Then I'm going to take it off because I think it'll be easier to mix it in another bowl and add it into a colder bowl before I add the egg whites. You want your egg whites to stay fairly stable. So I'll put it into another bowl. And these egg whites have been beaten up pretty thick. You know, when your egg whites, when you turn the bowl over upside down and they don't come out, then they're pretty thick. Of course, if they would have fallen out, but they're nice and thick, not too dry because that'll take away from the taste. Still kind of frothy. And always blend them in carefully. Carefully, carefully. Don't take them and beat them through because you don't want those poor egg whites to go spattering all over the place. They're only eggs that are beaten up. So be careful with them, and you'll see that they will give this a nice, wonderful feeling. Somebody said to me the other day she was beating up some egg whites and they didn't beat. What happened? Always be sure that your beaters are very dry. Let them set for a few minutes. If you've made something else and you have to beat egg whites again, dry them off and let it set for a moment, because sometimes there's a little wetness even on your towel or something. So let it set so that they'll be nice and dry. And blend this through, put this in the refrigerator at least 2 or 3 days. I'm trying to give you a whole dinner for Yom Kippur that you will have made at least 2 or 3 days in advance. And when you serve it, it's going to look just like this, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful dish. Here it is. Here we have a wonderful strawberry soup. And look at how delicious this looks. And if you serve it in a nice glass bowl, I think that too gives it a little feeling. Here I have some lovely glasses. And it's nice to serve it if you have a ladle or something that you can just ladle them right in. See, look at the consistency of it. A little thick because it is a soup and you want them to use a spoon to drink it. And then if you want to decorate it when you serve it with a little strawberry, well, just take your strawberry and put it right in. And look at how very nice that looks. So your fresh strawberry soup will be a wonderful beginning as you break the fast when you come home on Yom Kippur. Now, it is traditional on Yom Kippur to always serve a milchik dinner. This means that you will not serve anything that would have a meat base or anything that would be meat in it. Traditionally, we generally serve fish. Tuna fish, the children like peanut butter and jelly. But if you want to make something that really goes back and that's fun and that you're going to enjoy, how about some sweet and sour fish? Now, I have spoken about sweet and sour fish to some of my friends, and it's really a very complicated affair because they say that they remember when their grandmothers made sweet and sour fish that it was an all-day proposition and they didn't exactly know what the ingredients were and they didn't know how much of anything they used. So what I tried to do was to come up with a recipe that I think is fairly acceptable. I'll tell you what, it passed Jack's inspection. And Jack has been having sweet and sour fish for the last 30 years at the same club every day for lunch. And if he tasted this and said, yes, that flavor's good, then I think that you will like it. But if you have the recipe from your grandmother, use it. That's the important thing on Yom Tov, is to use what you remember, the traditions that you're handing down to your children that should be a part of your life. Now, sweet and sour fish requires using either white fish or trout. This week when I bought the fish, he had some lovely white fish. This fish weighs about 3 pounds. Have them clean it off and slice it into steaks. So here we have 3, 6, 7 pieces. And you could use this same amount of bouillon that I'm showing you here for 2 fish. If you wanted to make 12 pieces, you would use the same amount that I have here. I have a large 5-quart pot, and I have about a quart of water in here. Now add to that 1 cup of vinegar, because first you're going to cook up this nice sweet and sour flavoring that's going to give it this nice flavor. And this is almost like a court bouillon that has to cook in advance, and then you add your fish. And of course, here we go with the raisins again. But when we're cooking for holiday, we're always thinking again about the sweetness of tomorrow and the sweetness of the new year. And that's why everything that we cook has to do with this. Why have our people survived all these hundreds and thousands of years through Holocaust and pogroms and all kinds of things? Because of the wonderful optimism of the feeling of the sweetness of tomorrow. So in these, try the yellow raisins. I think the golden raisins look very pretty on the fish. but if you would prefer the black, which either way you like them. Now I have about a cup of raisins. My mother says, Eenie, I think a half a cup is enough. But I always say when I serve it, everybody says, oh, give me the piece that has all the raisins on it. So I think it's better just to put them all in. Then slice an onion, and you know, I don't like to slice anything too little and too mushy. I like things in large pieces. So slice your onion, if you have a large one, fine. If they're small, too, into nice wide slices, and add them into this nice court bouillon, and mix this through you. And then a wonderful lemon. When you buy your lemons, check to see that you have a nice rind, because you're going to eat this. This is going to taste so good that this will be on the top of your fish, and you're going to want to eat the lemon right with the fish. So be sure that you have a nice big lemon with a wonderful rind, and just slice it in large pieces. Again, don't chop anything up. You know the way I like to cook. I like to see things look appetizing and look interesting. Now cook this down for about 30 minutes on simmer until it gets to be very, very clear, and you'll see that your lemons and your onions will start to blend right into it. Now we're going to add to this the brown sugar. And I have a half a cup of brown sugar. I think that a half a cup of brown sugar to this large lemon and the 2 onions will come along to give it this nice sweet and sour flavor. But there's that one secret ingredient. I have to tell you this. Did you ever meet people who ask for a recipe and you know that they have not given you the whole recipe? They have kind of hesitated or given you a little wrong information? Well, I think I've got the right information now. And here's the secret. Ginger snaps. I know that sounds a little unusual, putting ginger snaps in your fish, but I'm telling you, it's wonderful. I have 1, 2, 3, I have 6 ginger snaps. And they're going to cook through that by the time the fish is put in here, these are going to be melted through, and you're going to have a marvelous flavor that people will wonder, what's in there? I can taste the onions and I can taste the lemon, but what is it that gives it that extra sweet and sour fish tasting? And it is the ginger snaps, because they have that very wonderful taste. The only thing is, let me caution you, if you're going to make this for Pesach, remember you can't use ginger snaps, because that happened to me one time. I thought, oh good, take out the sweet and sour fish recipe. And then when I start to look at it, I realized, no way can we do that. Now after you let this simmer in here about 5 minutes so that it gets a very, very nice flavor, then you have to add your fish. And add it, put it in very carefully so that the pieces don't break. You have nice steaks and set them in so that they fit into the water. Now if you're using more fish and they don't quite make it, then do it over again. Then make half of it and then take your court bouillon again and add the rest of the fish. Be sure that it is entirely covered so that the fish gets the wonderful flavor, but this goes very fast. If you leave it in here, 15 or 20 minutes at the most, you'll see that it will begin to flake. It will get a very, very nice feeling. And it's such a nice thing to serve, even if you want it as an appetizer. If people are coming for dinner and you want a lovely appetizer, it's a very, very nice thing to serve. Leave this in here about 15 to 20 minutes, and when you take it out, you're going to see that it will flake very, very nicely. And here's how it's going to look. I made this 3 days ago. And one of the tricks is, my husband always says, does it have the zolts? I says, what is zolts? He says, I don't know. My mother always said that if the liquid in it began to gel, that really meant that the fish was really good. I said, all right, you check it. And Jack says, yes, it has the zolts. So that means that this passed inspection. Now then, this fish, if you take a look at it, I'll take this off, and you can see how nice and white it is. Serve it just like this with a piece of lemon on it and the raisins and the onion. And it's a wonderful thing to serve. You just put it in your dish like this right from the pot, put it in the refrigerator, allow it to set for about 3 days until Yom Kippur, and all you have to do is come home from synagogue and take it out. You're all ready. So I think that this is really a very, very nice thing to make. Now, what are we going to make for dessert? I know that you want something that you can make ahead and that is rather light, a nice milk light dessert that's not too heavy. All right, I was trying to think of something that would go along with that idea. And I thought about, how about a wonderful peach kuchen? So when we were playing mahjong the other day, I said to the girls, what is a kuchen? What is a kuchen? And every one of them told me something different. It's something that their grandmother used to make, and they loved it. I said, well, that's a great explanation. Now, how do you make that? Well, they really didn't know, but they knew that it was delicious, and they knew that their grandmothers used to make it, and usually with some kind of fresh fruit. Well, we're going to use fresh peaches. Now, in order to make the base, a kuchen base, the best that I could figure out from what everybody told me, since they all had different ideas about how to do this, really didn't know exactly how to do it, but they knew that it was going to taste good. I used 1.25 cups of flour, sifted flour. I sifted the flour in here already. And then I have 1/2 cup of sugar I'm going to add into it, and 1/2 teaspoon salt, and here's 1/4 teaspoon baking powder, because you want that to give it a nice, the base should have a nice, wonderful feeling to it to pick up the fresh peaches. Then we're going to take 1/2 cup of butter and cut it in as you do for pie crust or something. This butter should be right out of the refrigerator. It should be cold, cold, cold. That's the way you want it to be. You want it to pick up that really good flavoring so that it feels good. Now look at how nicely it comes in. It should be about the size of peas when you look at it. Then to add to that, we're going to take 2 egg yolks and about 2 tablespoons of milk, and just kind of beat that together here a little bit. Just combine it a little bit. And use this as the liquid to add to your cooking base. And add it slowly with your wonderful, see, look at how creamy this gets. This is a very, very nice dough. And I think you could really use it for so many things. I worked with this for a while, and I think that this is really the best one. Otherwise, they get too creamy or they're too hard. And you want something that's going to be nice and cool and easy. Everybody has been sitting all day, and they're warm, and they're ready for something like this. So here you see how nice this wonderful dough is. Now, in order to show you, I did make one up already. And you see how creamy and it is. If I pick this up and put it in just to add to it, you could see how nicely it sets. It's a wonderful dough. Put it in carefully. Go along the sides and along the bottom. Now then, we're going to take our peaches. And here's the trick. Whenever you make any kind of a cake or a pie or anything with fresh fruit, with bananas or peaches or whatever you're going to use the fruit that's old and smelly and soft and everything else. That is the best kind to use. Sometimes my neighbor will say, oh, I got such smelly peaches, I'm going to throw them. I don't throw them out. This is when they're good for baking. This is when they're good for cooking. So we've taken our peaches, and I let them set for about 3 or 4 days in the bag before I cook with them. Or sometimes the store even has some peaches or something that are kind of well done. And I like to slice them rather thick so that it gives you a nice feeling. And I do it horizontally right down the pan. This is an 8.5 by 11 pan, and I did grease it first because I think that then it's easier just to put your cooking dough in it, and it's easier when you go to slice it. So just take your peaches very carefully and layer them, because this is what's going to look pretty when they come out of the oven. You want it to look nice when you put it in, and you want them to soften up. See, if you smell them, they really smell peachy. And I think when you get those hard, hard peaches, they don't have that wonderful smell to them. And this is what you really want when you're baking. When you're taking a peach off of the fruit bowl, well, that's a different story. But when you're doing it this way, we want a nice, soft dough and these wonderful peaches. Now to cover, I've used about 6 peaches in this one. And I think that just about does it, unless the peaches are very, very big. But regular sized peaches, it would take about 6. And if you have a few left, then just fill them in, because that only makes it better. Now to cover it over, we're going to make a nice streusel top. And in order to set up a nice streusel top with this, let's take a little flour. Here I have 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And I have 2 tablespoons of flour. And again, I'm going to cut in about 2 tablespoons. Where did I go with? Oh, this is such a wonderful piece of equipment. Do you use these when you make your pie crusts? Or are you making your pie crust in the Cuisinart now? Well, if not, this is still the best thing in the house. Add 2 tablespoons of butter to give it a nice flavor. And here again, wonderful secret ingredient to make this really taste good. Let's take a little nutmeg. And you know, if you're making applesauce, fresh applesauce, always use a little nutmeg, because it will bring up the flavor in any kind of a fruit pie. And here again in the peach pie, I'm going to take about, not too much, because you don't want it to taste nutmeggy. What you want it to do is just to give that little tiny feeling, just a little, about 1/4 of a teaspoon, just to give it that feeling. And then sprinkle this right over the top. And you'll see what a nice, nice flavor this is going to give it. We'll sprinkle this over the top of the pie. And you can make this in advance. Have it all baked and cooked and everything, so that when everybody comes home, have it more or less at room temperature. In fact, it's delicious if it's still warm. If you have a microwave, you can put it right in the microwave and give it a wonderful flavoring, because that will really give you a nice, nice taste. Now, I have put one in the oven that I'm going to show you. This one takes a hot oven, because you have a lot of fruit in here, and you want it to get a good solid baking time. So I think you should start it at about 375 and then turn it down to 350, about 40 minutes. It's going to take that long in order for it to really get finished. And if you want to reheat it later in the microwave, that's not going to make any difference, because you're still holding the same thing. If you're going to reheat it in the oven, then I would say that you would have to decrease this heating time a little bit. Put this in the oven and allow it to go for about 40 minutes. And when you take it out, look at how lovely it looks. And it's just easy to slice and easy to use, and you're really going to enjoy doing this. So when you start to think about cooking for holiday, always try to think of things that you can make in advance. You know, we live in a time now when girls are working and they're always looking for recipes of things to cook ahead. Well, we've been doing that for many, many thousands of years, because in Jewish life, the calendar is set so that the holidays begin the night before. And we always have to cook in advance. We're always cooking for a holiday which will fall 2 nights or 3 days or something, or with Yom Kippur. But I must tell you something about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur can never fall on Sunday. The second day of Rosh Hashanah cannot fall on Shabbos, so that Yom Kippur can never fall on Sunday, because it would be too much to have Shabbos and then go right into Yom Kippur. It would be impossible for us to prepare and get things ready. So the Hebrew calendar that is set on a 19-year basis with 7 times of the extra month, and it always is set so that Yom Kippur does not fall on a Sunday. And if you look forward to any of the calendars, or you want to know when your child is going to be bar mitzvah 12 years from now, they can always tell you the calendars are set many, many years in advance. But you'll see that they are set in a special way. And you know, they did it without calculators, and they did it without computers. They understood exactly how each holiday was to work out. So I hope that you will prepare your house in your heart for the holiday. Now, one of the things that you should always have on your table as the holiday begins is a challah, or a bread. Because in Jewish life, we do not live to eat. We eat to live. And so, before we begin any dinner or any meal, we stop and we give thanks to God for having given us the opportunity of having the bread from the earth and the fruit of the vine. And we bring out the lovely challah and we say the traditional kiddush, and we say the prayer over the challah and break bread together. In fact, instead of slicing it, it really is more fun if you break it together. And then on holiday, we always bring out a fruit that is just coming into season. And the apples are just coming into season now. So we bring out the apples with a little honey in the middle, pass it around, and say the traditional prayer over fruit where we dip the apple into the honey and say the prayer. You must always have this on your table for Rosh Hashanah, because this is one of the traditional ways in which we cook. So I hope that on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you too will make our wonderful strawberry soup. I think it's really something special, and I think you're going to enjoy it. It'll be a little bit different. Just spoon it in very carefully. If you have a nice ladle, I think that really adds something to it. We'll have our soup, and then we'll have our sweet and sour fish, which I think looks very nice. And if you want to make a little kugel or something with it, you can have that done in advance. Here we have our fish. And then if you would like to make this wonderful peach kuchen, I think that it's something very exciting that you will enjoy. I hope that all of you will have a happy, happy holiday. And it is also traditional on the New Year that when we meet someone or we see somebody, you say, Lashana Tova, Tikvutenu. And I say that to you from all of us, from the producer and the directors, and from Dee Tarnoff, who helped me today, and from everybody down at the studio, that you too will enjoy a happy and a healthy, and the most important thing, an optimistic New Year, so that each day is better than the last. I hope to see you the next time. Shalom.
Das Ziegele ist gefallen.